Bonjour, friends. Bonjour, bonjour, and happy Thursday. Cynthia here with another special edition of The Crowned Voice. Today we are going to continue talking about Miss USA and Miss Teen USA, who both resigned this week from their titles. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation. I am going to be speaking with her attorney, Miss USA's attorney, to answer some questions and to also get some reactions as well. So if you compete in beauty pageants or you know a woman who competes in beauty pageants, I urge you to share this live with her and sit down, relax. You can have your questions in the comments as well, and I'll try my best to bring them up to the attorney. So we're waiting for our guest to arrive, attorney Roseanne Plant. If you are here, you can go ahead and send me a request to join in. Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you to all of my friends and family and friends, I should say, from Brazil. All of the women who compete in pageants who are signed on. Bonjour, good morning. And I am excited about this conversation. I think she has just sent me a started. Reactions to the Miss USA and Miss Teen USA resignations. Bonjour, gorgeous.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Roseanne. Thank you so much, attorney Roseanne, for taking time out of your busy schedule and answering on short notice. I've learned recently that you are the attorney for Miss USA, and I have questions. We all have questions. So I thank you for taking the time out.
Oh my goodness, you're so welcome today.
Thank you. So obviously, Miss USA was happy on September 29th when she won. It was a dream come true.
Yes.
What happened to that happiness? What changed that happiness?
Well, many things happened, and as several people who are close to her have reported to the press, most recently the social media director, that it was not the dream come true that she had hoped. What happened was many of the things she'd been promised did not come to fruition, and she also felt that there was a environment that was not nurturing, that it was actually toxic. And so I have just recently become her attorney, but these are things that have been shared by people who were close to her and close around her during her reign. And then that led her to me because she did want to step down and needed somebody to review the contract that she had signed. Actually, this is very interesting, Cynthia, that she signed after she had become her Miss title, okay? So her state title. And what was interesting when I received it was I said, well, this is what happened after you received your state crown. And what it was everybody received the same contract,
Right.
okay? There was a blank where they put in their state title. And then that contract had a clause that said, if you become Miss USA 2023, here are the things that you're also bound by. So it was really what I consider an advance contract, and something that a lot of people at that moment were not in the mindset to think about, well, if I truly win, what's going to happen? So that's just the tip of the iceberg as we get started here today.
Okay, so you mentioned a toxic, well, folks who are around her mentioned a toxic environment. On the news this morning, as I was watching the news briefings, the news mentioned this situation, saying that there's bullying. It's a toxic environment. And, we cannot deny that in pageantry, unfortunately, there is bullying. There is a toxic environment. I firsthand experienced it as well. However, I want to talk about her seemingly being silenced to even discuss that. I'm told that there's an ironclad NDA. And if there is, and she can't talk about how the toxic environment and the bullying affected her health. She said in her statement that she's prioritizing her physical and mental health. If this environment during her reign affected her health, where is the transparency from the organization?
Well, that's very true, Cynthia. And that's what is heartbreaking for me as somebody that represents pageant queens and people in the pageant industry. So, really, what happened, and we can talk about bullying and we can talk about a toxic environment, and what's toxic and bullying to you may not be to me, and vice versa. That,
Okay.
that's what I consider, a very subjective topic. And what I want to do today is concentrate on the contract, because a contract is very black and white, as you know. And so, exactly, she is under NDA or confidentiality clause. It is probably the most restrictive one I have ever read in my 29 years of being an attorney. And it really does encompass, I may not talk about, and it says words like any and all, okay, of my experiences. I mean, it's this lengthy. Well, first of all, I think everybody should know that the contract, which I have a copy of and I've read several times, is 25 pages, single spaced. That's a significant contract. And the release section is a page all in capital letters. So it's just this big block of print. Very intimidating to somebody who's not an attorney, and somewhat intimidating to somebody who hasn't done a lot of contract work like I have. So it took me 20 minutes to skim it. It took me 2 hours to pick it apart and dissect it.
How many
Okay.
years
And if I chose,
how many years is it enforceable?
well, that's interesting. There are some clauses that are forever and perpetuity, and that is striking. Forever.
Wow.
That I spoke to somebody who's an attorney in my area in Iowa, and we were discussing this contract briefly, and they said, I've reviewed one from one of the very well-known talent shows.
Yes.
And they said it's the equivalent of either giving your life away or giving your firstborn child away. We used to say that. And that they're absolutely, I consider the contract to be predatory, and I'll explain why. And that's a strong word. But what happened was, these young ladies, and I have spoken to a majority of the class, okay? These young ladies were all given this contract. It was emailed to them on September 1st. Most of them received it late in the day or in the evening. Okay. Now, if you remember, September 1st is part of a Labor Day weekend.
Right.
Several of them were spending time with families. They were at events. Okay, so this email comes with this 25-page contract, and it says you must sign this contract and return by midnight, or you will not compete at Miss USA. I just want your listeners and you to think about that.
Wow.
It's a holiday weekend. I looked it up. It's a Friday, and it says you must sign this by midnight. What kind of, I mean, I'm just going to throw that back to you. I mean, I know how I would feel if I received that, but you also have to realize that we are mature women, and these young ladies are in their early 20s, some of them, okay? And they're smart and they're Savvy, but they also don't have the seasoning that maybe an older competitor would have.
Right.
Most people are just like, well, I've got to sign this, right? I have to sign this if I'm going to compete at Miss USA.
Right, especially under those conditions, and the fact that you are already in preparation mode. You've bought your gowns, you have paid your coaches, your family invested money, time, yes, resources. All of these things are on the table. So it's like, of course you're going to sign it. I recall a situation, as you said, much seasoned women, we in pageantry I competed in pageants for married women. There were pageants that had the husbands of the contestants sign on the day we arrive, saying, if your wife doesn't sign this contract, no, if you don't sign this contract, your wife is not going to compete. So that means, what is the husband going to do? He knows his wife has spent thousands of dollars on gowns. All her heart is in this. and he's faced with the decision: do I want to sign
Right.
this document and and allow my wife to participate in this agreement, or do I not sign it and have my wife kill me?
Well,
So
right. Right. And Cynthia, I was in that position as well. I participated in a very well-known international Mrs. pageant, and we were presented with an addendum, which means an
yes,
extra part of the contract at orientation in front of the directors, in front of the owners, and I was in the front row and I was appalled. And like you say, what do? You're right there. You can't do anything. And it's very unsettling. And I wanted to stand up and say, anybody else got a problem with this? But you don't dare say that.
right.
And that's predatory. And I'll tell you that really made an impression on me. It was my first Mrs. Pageant, my first entry back into pageantry. I'd done a few little local things in college, but I wasn't impressed as an attorney. And there were some other things that weekend or that week at that international pageant that I just it sent off many red flags that they had litigation and they weren't being transparent. And that was it. I served my time and fulfilled my contract, and that was the end of that. But what I want people to understand about this, because there's so much chatter, okay? I want to cut through the chatter. That's my job.
Uh,
Is that
okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, that this is a restrictive contract, and she cannot speak, okay? And that's why I'm here to tell people that these contracts that you sign. So she receives this contract on September 1st. All the ladies do. They have to sign it. Now here's the kicker. On the signature line, there's about 3 lines above where they sign. And this is also, they're going to sign it with DocuSign, which is a computer program
Right.
where you click through. Okay,
Right.
so click, 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 click. We all like to click, 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 right? And so that even makes it more, I think DocuSign makes it less, in your head somehow it makes it less official. Oh, I'm just clicking along like every day, but you're not, okay? So they've got to DocuSign all these things. And one of the ladies said on the call that I was with the other day that it made you go through, listen to this, it made you go through extra steps to save a copy.
Oh, wow.
Some of the
Wow.
some of the ladies don't even have a copy. So on this, back to the signature line, it says, I have received this and had time to have this reviewed by an attorney. But they didn't, because if they would have, any attorney worth their salt would have went, don't sign this. This is an awful contract.
Right.
When I say awful, Cynthia, there are certain things when we have contractual litigation that, for instance, damages. I want to talk about this one. Damages. You have to prove, well, that the damages was, that they were significant and persuasive, and they rose to the level that injured the organization. Those are legal issues that lawyers litigate.
Right.
In this contract, it says, I agree that if something happens that the damages are severe and persuasive and all these things are just in there. And unless you are a seasoned attorney, you
Right.
wouldn't know this, let alone a contestant. And so I believe that I'm going to tell you from my perspective as an attorney, this was sent at the last minute. They didn't want a lawyer to read it, because any lawyer would have said, time out here. And that this was really a predatory move. And then the other thing was, the top of the contract indicated that it was like the registration or the application. It has it doesn't just say agreement to participate, it has others. So some of them really felt that this was just like the paperwork, just like the application.
Yes. Oh,
And
yeah, the
that's
paperwork. What do we call
oh yes.
paperwork?
And that's misleading. And so you put all of these, do you understand? I want your listeners to hear this. I want not just people that compete in beauty pageants, but compete in any, fitness contest, any of this. I want people to listen to this. And this is one of my number one cardinal rules for clients. If somebody seems to be rushing you, the first thing you do is stop.
Wow.
I'm going to say that.
Yes.
That again. If somebody seems to be rushing you, the first thing you do is stop. Because why? If somebody rushes you, they're trying to do what? They're trying to override your thought process, right? We're in an instant society now, right, Cynthia?
Right.
We got to do it. No, doesn't apply here. No, I say to my clients, no,
Let
we're
me
not
ask
just
you this.
no.
In that contract, is there an arbitration clause?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Let's talk about that. So if you have a disagreement with somebody, You want to go to the contract. It's toward the end. There are certain contracts are written. There are some standards, like there's a severability clause at the end. It tells you what state the contract was made and what law will govern it. And at the end, it will also say, if you have a problem with this, this is how we're going to do it. So
Right.
people don't like to go to court unless they have to. So it is very common in this day and age to have a mediation or an arbitration clause. And I want to talk to your listeners about the difference because people mishmash those two terms. A mediation, okay, and I'm a mediator. I do that by trade. In addition to my legal practice, a mediator comes into a situation, kind of like when you have two kids, Cynthia, right? You're a mom,
Yes.
and they're fighting, right? And you're the mediator, and you come in and you say, what's going on? What's your point? What's your point? And a mediator walks people toward a mid ground, okay?
Right.
Arbitrators are very different. Arbitrators are very different, okay? They are hired by usually the party who made the contract. So here it would be Miss USA. And these arbitrators come in and we find that over 90% of the time they find for the party that hired them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then arbitrators, mediators, you go in if you don't have a deal. It is what it is. It's confidential in a lot of states. You can't go into court and say, well, we almost had this settled. Mediations are confidential. You know, it doesn't go any further. Arbitrators come in, they make a decision. Okay. They make a decision, and what happens is it's binding. It's binding arbitration, which means this is it. No appeal, done. So do you see how they just wrapped it all up here?
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So these pageantry initially was supposed to be about women empowerment.
Correct.
This does not sound like empowerment at all.
Cynthia, this is the opposite of empowerment. You know, I was talking to somebody privately about this, and I said, and I'm gonna use some strong words. Predatory. I think it's a predatory agreement. And number two, I think this is reduces women to cogs in the wheel. We are a tool for a business, and in my opinion, they are turning you into a piece of property. You know, some kind of machine. Do you understand?
Yes.
We are mere pawns, and in 2024, let's talk about this. In 2024, we're talking about this. I feel like it's a throwback to when women didn't have credit cards, when we couldn't own property. I mean, I think this is a tremendous step back, and I think it is a tremendous shackle on women. And I'm appalled by it.
I'm appalled as
disgusted.
well. I'm appalled as well because I would love to talk to Noelia and I can't.
No, you
because
can't.
of different. I cannot speak to her. I mean,
No.
It's ridiculous. Why can she not share her experience? We want to know what happened to you.
And
how is she? How is she doing?
You know, she's doing as well as can be expected. And I think she is very brave and very strong. But I think even the strongest of us would struggle with a situation like this, would struggle with being sold a dream. And then the dark side is you sign this paper. And I do know this from people that were close to her, that things would come up and that the contract would constantly be weaponized against her. Oh. They would say, we won't do that, or check your contract. So here's another thing I want ladies to hear, and gentlemen too, okay? Men participate in these contests as well. If somebody tells you A, B, C, or D, but the contract says X, Y, Z, guess what it's going to be, Cynthia? It's going to be X, Y, Z, because somebody can tell you till the cows come home, okay, that we're going to do this, this, and this for you. But if it's not in that written document, it is not going to happen. And you'd say, who would be so devious to tell you A and then give you B? A lot of people. Cynthia, my husband is an engineer. He was. And I remember years ago, I was upset about somebody not doing something that I thought was the right thing to do. Okay, so we can talk about ethics. We can talk about morals. We can talk about manners. Okay, we can talk about how we should act in society, right? Cultural manners, social graces, right? Okay, what we think should happen. You know in your
Right.
mind, this is how this should go down, or this would be the proper way to handle things. So I want everybody to have that in their mind. And then these contracts do the opposite. And so one day I was very frustrated. I said, I don't know why people just don't do the right thing. And my very wise mechanical husband, if you're a lawyer, I think you should always marry somebody who's the opposite, who's very, very technical. He said, why should anybody do that? Why should we? I'm so sorry. My phone just keeps ringing today. Why should anybody do that? He said, because if they can try 100 times and they only get pushed back 5 times, guess what? They're going to continue to
They're going to
do it.
continue.
Think about
Yeah.
and I call that the Chad Plant a theory on life. And that really has stuck with me, Cynthia. They're going to push until people push back. I'm going to repeat that again. They're going to push until somebody pushes back. Do you understand?
I totally
And they
understand. So, okay, Roseanne, now
Yes.
we talked about the mental and the physical stress during her reign. Everyone in the pageant industry, reports are coming out, rumors are coming out that financial, um, you know, the financial aspect, her not receiving her prize money, her not receiving the prize package is also a factor in her stepping down. Can you clarify if the organization indeed offered her the prize package and the financial support?
Well, I believe people around her have indicated, several people in New York Times articles, and the social media director has noted, and the social media director who stepped down does not have a contract. And I know that she has told many press outlets that some of the promised prizes were either not delivered or not delivered in a timely manner. I do know that it is common knowledge that the apartment was not forthcoming until several months into the reign. However, what I want to say is, after reviewing the contract, Cynthia, it says an apartment may be provided, or the organization can ask the queen to stay in her current location. So, do you understand?
Oh,
If
wow.
if you're promised I think everybody is just like, oh, she was going to get an apartment. No, the contract said
May.
may. I want to talk to your viewers about the strength of words. May is not must. Shall is not must. Do you see the difference?
Oh, gosh.
You
Okay.
really
Is it,
need, here's the deal. You really need a lawyer to read these contracts. And here's my other thing. Here's my other piece of advice. If you're presented a contract like this, I think you should have at least 10 to 14 days to review it. Okay. And I believe now I assistant direct a pageant, and I can tell you that for years on our website, we had a sample of one of our contracts
oh,
way in advance, okay, of past contracts. And then the newer contract was presented early in the process. This is my call to action. Okay, as the pageant attorney, okay, the pageant lawyer, this is my call to action, that every single pageant present the contract that the reigning new queen will have to sign, okay? Or if you're recruiting state title holders, whatever it is, that person, before they sign, have 10 to 14 days to have an attorney review that contract. That's transparency, Cynthia, and that gives people an opportunity to negotiate these contracts, or realize that this is not a pageant that they want to be involved in. And I want to repeat this. Or realize that this is not a pageant or business. Okay. I watched your interview with Jennifer Lloyd, and she's like, this is a business. Absolutely. Or this is a business that you don't want to patronize. Now think about
right.
this. If you're unhappy with your meal, do you go back to a restaurant?
Wow.
If
You know, you,
you
you,
don't if you don't like
you,
a dress, you don't go back to that dress place. This is a major investment. Why would you want to do business or align yourself, your image, your brand, your mental health with somebody who's not going to take care of you? That's
okay,
awful.
let's play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
I will be the devil's advocate here.
Okay.
I am the business, right? I am
Okay.
the business, the pageant. The queen has won. She's on
Yes.
stage. Everyone's happy. She's getting her crown. I am ready for her to go to work. I have my
Yes.
contract. If I have to wait for her to go over this contract from then until 14 days, where does that leave me? I have a timeline. I have photos to publish.
Okay.
I have prize packages to release. I, as the business, I have things to do. What if that contestant comes back and say, well, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that? Then what
Well,
happens to me as the pageant?
sure. So, like I said before, I didn't maybe make myself clear. Before the crowning, 10 to 14 days before the pageant happens, or before you sign up as a state title holder. These things should be done
Before.
before.
Okay.
Before.
Okay.
It's kind of like we've planned. I've planned parties, wedding. I planned a wedding. I had contracts before the wedding.
Okay.
I didn't see the flowers and then sign the contract. I'm saying to ladies, as let's say you're going to go enter the state pageant. I want to see what the contract is before I sign up for the state pageant. Okay. And then in this case, the USA gals, they had a contract to enter the state pageant. And then what should happen is before they would even get to Miss USA, they should have time to look at that contract
Yes.
before go.
Okay.
And I think there should have been a national contract, but that's a lawyer's agreement. But what I'm saying is you should, and ideally, I think every Miss contestant who's trying to be Miss whatever state, they should get this national contract before they go to state. Do you understand
Yes. Yeah.
that
Makes sense.
why I don't know why this is so difficult for the pageant industry, because in lots of industries we do contracts before anything ever happens, before dirt is
Yeah.
moved. I meet with people, Cynthia, in my office. They want to hire me. And I say, I assess their case, and then I say, and this is my contract, and these are my terms. And if you can't meet the terms, we can't do business together. It's that simple. This is
Regarding the
not
price,
hard.
regarding the prize package, is there a way to guarantee that contestants' prize money is going to be available, like maybe in an escrow account, where how do we guarantee because of what happened here? It says may not. She may have received all of the money. She may have not. Is there a way to guarantee it, like an escrow account, insurance, assurance? Is there any way?
Those are all possibilities, but I don't think you're going to see that. I think that's where you look at your contract. Okay, so if I would have looked at this, I would have said to somebody, you're not necessarily going to get this apartment. It says or. So I would concentrate more on having strong contract language to protect the contestant so that they could go to arbitration or mediation or whatever. And I wouldn't have an arbitration clause. I would have a mediation clause in these things. And I would concentrate more on the strong language. You could try to do an escrow. You could try to do some of those things, but those are more unusual and more difficult. And once again, this comes down to reputation as well.
Right.
If any system is soon to be found out that they don't do their prizes, guess what? They should lose credibility and they should lose contestants. And so, once again, it's about who you are, what your brand is, how, trustworthiness. And then I want to say another thing about contracts. They should be executed in what we call good faith, Cynthia. That I and you come to the table in good faith. We want to work together. We want to be fair. And I want to say that I'm not seeing a lot of good faith here.
Wow. Okay, in that case, regarding the NDA, if there's not a lot of good faith, if the organization is not doing what they were supposed to do regarding the prize package and support mentally, financially, doesn't that release the contestant?
Not necessarily, Cynthia. What happens is that's for a court of law or the arbitrator to decide here. And the arbitrator, can I also tell you, does not have to follow the law.
Oh,
They don't have to. And I've seen many of them not follow the law. So here's the deal. You could argue that could be, it's called a defense. If she were to come out and speak, my client, and say, and then she were to be, drug into arbitration as a defense, she could say, well, I think you breached the terms first. But if that arbitrator doesn't agree, then you have exposed yourself to a lawsuit, to attorney's fees. And this contract also says if that happens, she could be responsible for their attorney's fees. Do you understand the risk that people are taking? Lawsuits, Cynthia, can
Wow.
cost people thousands and thousands of
Roseanne,
dollars.
if it's
Yes.
clear that the organization is not doing their part, I'm asking again for me and my followers, if the
Yes.
organization is not doing their part, doesn't that release her from that NDA?
Not necessarily. And what you're doing is you're buying yourself a whole lot of stress and litigation or arbitration and attorney. I mean, I'd ask you, is it worth the chance to find out and spend
Wow.
$25,000, $30,000 in a year of your life fighting it? You want
Wow.
to talk about mental stress? You
Wow.
want to talk about mental stress? I personally, my husband was involved in a terrible car accident, which we had to then litigate. As an attorney at the time of about 22 years, I did not enjoy being on the other side of the desk, Cynthia. It was horrible. And it was something that was not our fault. I was
This
asleep in
is
my
so
bed when
dis
my husband was hurt.
this
I
is
hated
so
it. It was awful.
disempowering. This is bad for a young
It
woman.
is bad. And I want to stand on my roof here in Iowa and scream to the whole either coast. Please wake up, ladies. Wake up. Okay. Can I just say this to your listeners?
Go ahead.
A crown, a crown A crown does not make you who you are. You don't need it. I think we spend so much time chasing a dream and what we think it's going to be that this is a reality shock when to us it's a dream and to the organization it's a business. You don't need it, ladies. Please. My gosh, I got to communicate with a majority of the class, and they're these beautiful, talented, gorgeous, smart women. Gosh, you don't need that crown. If you want a crown, I'll buy you one. Okay, and get on eBay. Okay, here's the deal. I think we get so wrapped up in having that be our self-worth. You don't need it, and you don't need it from an organization like that. Please. I mean, pageants are a wonderful thing, but I think for some people, perhaps it's they need to look inside instead of outside at a sparkly tin tiara. And I think what's happening in this case, and the talent shows and all the things, is everybody wants that chance, everybody has that dream, so they'll do anything, right, Cynthia? They'll do anything to get on that stage. But is it really worth your mental health? See, I say to people, you'll do anything, but guess what? This could happen. Do you see my point?
Yes.
I'll do anything. We used to say the old saying, I'll sell my soul to the
Yes.
devil. And this is what happens. You don't need it. So if I can leave everybody with one message, it's one, you need a lawyer and don't be rushed. But two, know your worth, everybody. Know your worth. And these people prey on that. Do you get it? People prey on other people's weaknesses or,
Dreams.
desires or emotions.
Desires. Yeah.
What they're doing is they're taking a legal document and they're preying on their emotions. And then when it goes badly, and I've always said this, if you don't read the contract, what happens if you win? Well, here we go. We know what happens when you win now. When you win now, it can turn out very bad. The dream turns into a
Wow.
nightmare. Okay, the dream turns into a nightmare. It's not. We spent too much time getting there and not enough time thinking about it. It's like planning a giant wedding and being into the wedding but not thinking about the
Yeah.
marriage.
Well, Attorney Roseanne, thank you so much. Our hearts go out. My heart goes out to your client,
Yes,
and let her know that we stand in solidarity with her.
I will let her.
There are
I will let
so
her. And
many
thank you.
people rooting for her.
And thank you for this platform. And I just, once again, I urge anybody to, reach out to a lawyer in the area, reach out to me. I'm the pageant lawyer. I can review contracts and find your voice and say, no, here's the deal. Remember my husband's thing. They're going to push until you push back. And can I just tell you, Cynthia, this isn't going to change unless it's a groundswell from within the pageant world, okay? That we have to have every woman saying, I demand, I deserve this.
You were my first guest when I started this platform, remember?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know I was your first
You
guest.
were the
No.
very first guest, and we were talking about what? Contracts.
Contracts. Here we go. Mm-hmm.
We were talking about contracts.
That's right. And here we are. Wow. Here we are.
Have you ever seen a fair contract in this industry?
I have.
You have seen a
Absolutely.
fair
Mm-hmm.
contract?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can, here's the deal, Cynthia. A contract is simply putting into writing what you and I agree to as a business person, okay? So that we can hold each other accountable. It can be fair. It can be fair because it should just put on paper, okay, what we agreed to so that we can look back and say, well, did you say that? Oh, no, I said that. It is not and does not have to be a weapon that is used against somebody. You can have a fair contract. I've seen many in my day.
Wow. So
Mhm.
someone just said, let her speak. The contract, the NDA prohibits her from sharing her experience. Is that limited to negative experience?
All.
Can she?
The word is all. The word is all. And so the title holders have called for them to release her, and they can release her. Miss USA can release that. So her fellow queens have asked, let her speak.
So she cannot say anything. Why? Is it because she resigned?
Nope.
Or
No,
so if you
it's just
resign, you cannot say anything. But if you continue being the queen, you can speak about your experiences, good or bad.
no, it was all experiences. I'm not to speak about any and all experiences.
Whether you resign or not.
Yes.
Hmm.
I'm sure I'm just prophesizing that I'm sure that, positive things, they're not going to get upset about, they're more worried about negative, but it said, can't participate, can't prepare, can't do any of these things at all. If it talks about my time with the pageant, my experience, but I mean, it's all encompassing. Now I'll tell you, Cynthia, it's one heck of a, I guess I don't want to call it a well-written contract, but it's very well written for them.
Does she have a therapist or a mentor that she can heal and speak to? Because
I can't.
I'm thinking if you've experienced this, there has to be an outlet. If you can't do it publicly, which is not a requirement, but
Right.
there should be someone that you can talk to. Is she
I
healing?
can't speak directly to that. That's her confidential information. But what I can say is that I encourage anybody in these situations to seek out a mentor, an attorney, a therapist, somebody who they can share with, especially maybe a life coach. I would encourage anybody going through something like this to do that because it strengthens not only you in the crisis, but it helps you build on your character going forth. So that I would encourage anybody in these situations to do something like that. But I can't speak directly for her on that point. No.
Is there anything that we can do? Can we reach out? Can the community, the pageant community, can the world reach out on behalf of this young woman to the organization to release her? What can we do?
Absolutely. The best advocacy is in numbers. And if you have one person speaking out and you have a million people speaking out, it's a big difference. And so I would encourage people in the pageant community to say to Miss USA, why are you doing this to the organization? And we want transparency. And we loved this brand and we loved this pageant. But what happened here? And so absolutely you can do that. There's nothing that says you can't.
How are they reacting with you being the representative, the
I,
legal representative?
I have not heard from the organization.
Wow. No one has.
Nobody has. That's a pretty typical response sometimes, Cynthia, in these high crisis, high profile things. I'm not terribly surprised by
So
that.
where's the transparency?
That's the question, isn't it?
And we end on that note.
Yes.
Where's the
Yes.
transparency?
Mm-hmm.
Roseanne, thank you for taking time out. I see your phone is ringing and you have given
Yes.
us your time, your expertise. Again, please share with your client that we stand with her and we're sending her all the love and the support. And when she's released, we would love to have a conversation with her. And we stand with her. Thanks again, my
Thank you.
friends from around the world. You have been you have been watching The Crowned Voice. I am the queen of pageant talk. I am going to reshare this with Roseanne's contact information. Send this live to a woman who competes in pageants. She needs to hear this information about contracts. If you are a woman and you are in a toxic pageant environment, you are experiencing bullying, there's lack of transparency, and you would like to be a guest, please reach out to me. If you would like to speak off camera, I am available to have a private conversation with you as well. Once again, Roseanne, thank you very much. Have a
You're welcome.
wonderful day. Bye,
You
everyone.
too.